might be arriving to some sad scenes. I'm hoping it's not going to be the case. I've been avoiding the Nkuhumas a little bit. It's amazing how attached we have become to them. And we're going to discuss in a little bit more depth in a moment, once we get a little bit closer, exactly what is happening with them. Hello, girls and boys, maybe. Okay, that's good. Oh, whoopsie daisies. Hello, boy. Sorry, I didn't see you there, Nkuhuma. One massive Birmingham boy looking over in a stately manner across at the rest of the pride. And they're feeding on the buffalo. One lioness is now standing up. Let's see what we have here. So to give you an update on the situation with the Nkuhumas, of course, we were struck by the mystery as to why all of the cubs or some of the cubs were starting to show a great deal of weakness in their back legs and ultimately ended up paralyzed. Now, preliminary results, and this is an update that we received last night, preliminary results from the autopsy done on one of the cubs is that it is in fact white muscle disease. That seems to be relatively confirmed. I know that the Sabi Sand will be releasing an official statement in the not too distant future, but it seems to be that their suspicions, what was originally a theory, is now confirmed. And there's very, very little evidence in literature, literature on this particular type of disease in lions, especially in wild lions. It is known as nutritional muscular dystrophy. So essentially what it is mainly a shortage of vitamin E and selenium as well. And it seems to cause exceptional weakness in particularly the back muscles and the back leg muscles of the animals. Now, what was tremendously concerning for me, and I have to say I woke up at 1 o'clock this morning and lay awake until about 3, and then had to get up 45 minutes later. But I lay awake from about 1 o'clock in the morning puzzling over this particular mystery. We are asking for more information. We're trying to find out as much as we can about what exactly is going on with the lions. But what was particularly concerning yesterday was with Taylor. One of the adult lionesses started to show what looked to me like the same symptoms. Now, it could have been that it was an injury from the buffalo hunt. We can't necessarily jump to the conclusion, and it's very difficult to speculate, and we should try and stay away from speculation. But it looked to me that she was struggling with that exact thing. But so far, all 4 cubs from yesterday are present, 2 of them feeding quite happily away on their buffalo. The Nkuhumas, despite their trials at the moment, have already shown themselves to be more than capable of hunting. This is actually their second buffalo kill. They made 2 of them about a day and a half ago. They look okay, little ones. Still eating, still feeding, ears back, growling a little bit, so they're still very spirited. You can just hear the little growls. No, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a 5th cub. Here we go, cub number 5. Well, that already is a very positive thing. And there's definitely the 2 cubs at the back, and the 5th one's just come in and started feeding. My goodness, look at the bellies on those cubs. They are so full. Little one attempting to suckle from mom. See it working its paws at the tummy. Okay, so that's really positive. We've got 5 cubs, not 4, as originally expected. That is happy news. And of course, it's entirely possible that they will come through this and that they will recover. We just don't know at this point. I'm hopeful, though. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All 5 lionesses are here as well. So we've got the 1 lioness over there feeding with the 2 cubs. We've got 2 lionesses lying in the middle of the road and another 2 lying off over there to the right. So it must mean that Amber Eyes and the young female have rejoined the rest of the pride. That's good news. The Nkuhuma's back together once again. Little cubs curiously watching the passage of vultures. Well, cub displaced. Determined not to be outdone. Little female. No, oh, sorry, little male cub. All cubs standing now. Phew, that's a relief. And it is a relief to see... Oh! Nothing like starting your morning with a kick to a face. Making little begging sounds. And it's interesting. Yes, little one. Listen to the sounds it's making. Begging mom to lie back down so that it can continue suckling. And that, of course, has been one of the big explanations behind why the cubs have been in the condition that they've been in, is that the mothers just aren't getting the nutrients, despite the fact that they're eating well, or at least they're eating lots. They've had lots and lots of buffalo kills over the last few months. They just aren't getting, the buffalo aren't getting the vitamins they need, and therefore the lionesses aren't. And they're not producing the milk that they should be. Covering up the stomach contents of that buffalo kill. I'm going to sit and watch our wonderful lion pride and see how they're all doing. I mentioned at the start of the sunrise safari that we have all sorts of exciting things planned, and I think that James is out and about. Let's go and see if he has something to show you. That, everybody, it seems as though James lost signal. As you know, bringing you live safaris from the middle of the African bush, sometimes every now and again things go a little bit wrong. There we go. We are still with our lions. We had to take a brief break to go and just sort something out with our antenna. And I might, in a moment, have to play a hopscotch with Aubrey, who is arriving with his guests. And basically what I mean by that, for those of you that are new, is that there are lodges in this area, and they do come and enjoy these magical sightings with us. So Aubrey is one of the guides from Djuma, and he is on his way. I can hear him trundling up behind me. Let me just see whether or not he can actually see, and his guests can actually see, or if he wants to squeeze past. Morning! Oh, no, he seems fine. Taking a slightly different approach. So Nkuhuma, lying up with a very full belly. I noticed earlier, briefly, when he had his head up, that his face is looking 10 times better. And that is just an example of how incredibly resilient their immune systems are. And that's what astounds me, is that something so small as a vitamin deficiency can cause such drastic symptoms, and yet when they have injuries like Nkuhuma had with a massive hole in his face, he managed to heal up and look absolutely fine in a matter of months. And it was a really nasty injury. It was a nasty infection that he had. We don't know exactly how he got that injury, but he seems absolutely fine now. Hello, girls. They're all flopping down, exhausted, and that could just be because they have enormous bellies. Pat in Washington, very good question from you, and I think it's something that we've all been thinking about. And that is, if the... Sorry, just waving hello to Rexon and co. You're wondering, if Amber Eyes and the young female fall pregnant, and if they have cubs, will their cubs have a better chance because they have the buffalo? It's rained, so the buffalo will have more nutrition, and as a result, the food will be better, the milk will be better, and so on. Will they have a better chance of survival? Yes, quite possibly. That seems really likely. Hello, girl. Sorry, I just want to watch her walk for a little bit. We are reporting back on all of these sightings, straight back to those people who are in charge and the managers of this area. Oh, goodness. That belly. So incredibly full. This is a completely unexpected side effect of the drought, and it is entirely due to the drought. So yes, I think that probably Amber Eyes and the young female, if they did have cubs, I think that their cubs would have a better chance of survival. But the fact that we have 5 here and not 4, as far as I know yesterday, Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, although I was in final control for the entirety of that drive, but as far as I know there were only 4 yesterday that were seen. That's a really very good sign that we've actually got 5, because it could actually mean that the one cub that didn't make it to the sighting yesterday is actually doing a little bit better. Remember how the female went off to call cubs? Yeah, I thought so. Louise just confirming that there were only 4 cubs yesterday. It's a very good thing. Means that the cub that she was trying to call made it here. Hello, girl. At least they're managing to get food. Is that not the female that we saw yesterday? The one that went to go and fetch her cub and was calling. She was the one. Let's see if she's got that injury on her back. Oh, I can't see from this angle. So yes, the cubs in future will have a better chance. One of the big things that we've been discussing amongst us as guides, because obviously this is, for all of us, this is the first time we've ever seen this. So for all of us, it is a complete mystery, and we know very little about it apart from what we've researched on and what we've learned over the last few days. But what's interesting to me is that none of the other, as far as we know, we're still trying to find out, but as far as we know, none of the other lions in the Sabi Sand are showing the same symptoms. Lions have been recorded with it at exactly the same time in a place called Imbabat, but that's quite a long way away from here, and it's a mystery to me as to why it is that it's specific to the Nkuhumas. My only conclusion, and James and I were talking about it this morning, our conclusion is that it's with the drought and the quality of the soil in this particular area. Obviously, the plants are not carrying the normal nutrients that they would have in a normal rainy season. But in other areas where the soil types are slightly different, the grasses are of a slightly better quality, and the buffalo, therefore, are doing slightly better. If they might still be looking thin in the same way our buffalo are, but they might just have that extra degree of vitamin E. Massive paw. And Cindy, in North Carolina, you wanted a little bit more of an in-depth explanation into diseases that are brought on during the drought. And a combination of vitamin deficiencies, and what was it called? It'll come back to me. Sorry, Cindy, I'll come back to that in a moment. So in terms of drought, mange is, of course, one of the big ones that we've been seeing. And it's not just the lions that have been afflicted with mange. It's the impala, the inyala. It is carried by a mite that is particularly prevalent during dry conditions and during drought conditions. As soon as it starts to rain properly, it starts to wash away the mite and the skin conditions, and the animals immediately start to recover, which I think is one of the big reasons why the Nkuhumas, who did contract mange, managed to handle it in a much more resilient way than the Styx cubs, for example, just because they just got lucky. They might also have had slightly better genetics in terms of dealing with it. Anthrax is another big one during dry season. Generally, diseases tend to spread more during dry season than they do in wet season, just because of the amount of rotting carcasses, the amount of, I hate to say it, but death that we see during times like these. I mean, nature's very, very efficient in terms of cleaning up after herself, but we've seen, like with that dead buffalo at Buffelshoek, that at the moment the scavengers are just, well, they're essentially spoiled for choice. Anthrax, rabies tends to be another big one, that you get the outbreaks more during, for some reason, during the dry season than during the wet season. And anthrax, as I said earlier. Then, I read an article yesterday about the perfect storm, as it was described by researchers, of the spread of a disease in Kenya that was after a bad dry season and then conversely very, very heavy rain. And I'm just trying to remember, it was a combination of a nutritional deficiency combined with a type of tick, and I'm just trying to remember the type of tick. Babesiosis, it was something like that. Definitely begins with a B. And it's carried by ticks, and it's a parasite that transmit disease. And it might be something that those of you might even be more familiar with. Those of you in the northern hemisphere that have learned a bit more about Lyme disease, apparently the two are quite closely connected. So it's something that you will get in the States and in the North Americas. And it's an infection by a type of parasite called Babesia. That's it. So that's something that in the article they actually said was basically spread due to a combination of drought, which created the nutritional deficiency, and then the spread of this parasite during heavy rainy season. And often ticks are more prevalent in rainy seasons as well. So those are the major diseases that I can think of. Canine distemper, which is something that we were initially concerned about, which is why we were desperate to get these cubs checked out by a vet, because canine distemper, of course, could have been brought in through an external human source, essentially an anthropogenic cause. Now, that's been ruled out since, but canine distemper spreads at any time. It just depends. You get various outbreaks at various times of the year. It's a virus. It's carried. Those of you with dogs will know all about it. You'll know that you have to vaccinate your dogs. And it's something that is usually introduced by things like feral dogs or feral cats moving into an area. And despite the name canine distemper, it is able to affect wild cats, wild big cats, and lions in particular seem to get infected with it. The biggest problem with lions, of course, is that they're social in nature. So if it had been a disease like canine distemper, our biggest concern was how fast it was going to spread. And that was a very big concern, particularly because, of course, the Birmingham boys will be a vector of any kind of virus that moves through pride. So whilst if it were just the Nkuhumas, they would, it might remain centered just to them. With the Birmingham boys moving between lines, it could have spread to all of the different prides of this area. Luckily, that's not what we're dealing with now. And while our lions snooze away, I'm going to stay a little bit longer I want to just confirm exactly what's happening with the adults of this pride. But while our lions snooze away, Taylor is out on foot. Let's go and find out what her plans are. We are still with our Nkuhuma pride. Now, it seems as though James's signal is not particularly strong at Karula. So once we're finished here, we're actually going to do a swap around, and myself and VM will make our way towards Karula, and James will come and sit with the lions. Now, one of the big reasons that, of course, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to sit with these lions is to try and watch the way that the females, the adults, are moving. And the one female from yesterday did get up and move into some very thick bushes over there in front of us. She was moving with great, great difficulty. It was a struggle for her to get to that particular position. She isn't comfortable at all. Now, the difficulty, of course, with this female is that she has that injury on the back, just above her tail, right in the middle of her spine. And that probably came from an injury that she got while she was hunting. It's an old-ish injury. We've seen it before. But it's impossible for us to tell at the moment whether or not it's the injury causing that difficulty in her back legs, or if it's the same thing that has affected the cubs. So that's what we're trying to figure out now, just by watching her behavior, by trying to see the way all of the adult females are moving. She really is struggling. It could be an infection that's pressing down on her spinal column. And the one cub, the smallest cub, this one, is also not walking particularly well. It's here, it's with the rest of the group, but it is showing the same symptoms. Now, this is really very difficult for us to watch, but we're staying with them and we are watching them for a very specific purpose, because we need to report back to those people who are the authorities in the area. We need to report back the progression of this particular problem with the Nkuhumas. I'll just to warn you, and those of you will know it, it's very difficult to watch, and I promise you it is very difficult for us as well. We cannot help but to become incredibly attached to this particular pride of lions, and it is never nice to see animals in pain and suffering. But I have to tell you that I doubt, and in fact it will probably be the approach, because this is a natural disease, there will not be any intervention. We do, however, need to track the progress of disease so that we can report and so that these findings can be used in the future in terms of understanding the effect that this particular nutritional disorder has on wild lions, because there's very, very little information available to us. And that's one of the big reasons why we're staying with and monitoring these lions. I thought about that, Jen B, and thank you for sending through that question. I thought about the exact same thing. I was wondering about it, and I don't have the answer for you, but Jen B's question is, could it be that the Nkuhumas have actually been too successful with the buffalo, and if perhaps they had included other animals in their diet, maybe they would not be faced with this particular nutritional problem? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Perhaps if they had focused on kudu, for example, that are adapted to browse and therefore have survived a little bit better through the drought. Zebra, I'm not so sure about. I mean, the zebra are also bulk grazers in the same way buffalo are. We've seen the buffalo looking very thin. We've seen them browsing, which is unusual, but they are supplementing their diet a great deal with leaves, which their digestive systems are not really adapted to cope with. Jen, I don't know. The thought had occurred to me, the fact that they have only targeted buffalo. Could that be? I really don't know. I'm not sure. Don't have the answer to that. Here comes the lioness. She went off to investigate because the vultures were descending upon the second carcass. So she went to chase them off. I just want to watch her for a little bit longer. She's one of the few of the adult females that we've seen up, apart from the one that's really struggling. Come here, girl. Come a little bit more into the open, please. I just want to watch the position of her back. The posture is very indicative of this particular, what they strongly suspect the problem to be. And in fact, as I said, for those of you who perhaps missed the start of the sunrise safari, the initial autopsy results indicate that it is what they've suspected all along, which is white muscle disease. Now, one of the defining symptoms before the animals actually lose the control of their back legs is a tucked-in posture with the tail down and a sort of the back is actually struggling to stay straight. So they get an almost submissive-like posture with their tail tucked down and their haunches sort of tucked under. They're still eating so well. That's what's astounding about that. That's, I think, why it's taken us so by surprise. I know. James agreed. James has raised another point that I've been thinking about, which is how incredibly quickly this particular problem has taken hold and how quickly it has affected the various lions. And you're wondering if perhaps it is more common than we realize, or perhaps we've just missed the symptoms. I don't think it's that common, James. Otherwise, we would know far more about it. There's evidence in captive lions in terms of vitamin deficiency, but a lot of that is vitamin A deficiencies rather than vitamin E deficiencies. I'm slightly flabbergasted. The cubs make total sense to me, but the fact that it has affected if it has affected the adult lionesses in the way that I think it has, and I have to be honest, I think it has. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. There's no point pretending it's something else when it's not. The fact that it's affected the adult lionesses as well, as quickly as it's affected the cubs, confuses me. But I'm not an expert. I'm not a vet. I'm not a scientist. I don't know that much about it and the biology behind it. There you go. So Michael, that is a question that has come through from Michael, and Michael's obviously been doing his research, saying that you thought it only affected young animals and not adults. Michael, it depends on the species that we're talking about, and the biggest problem, of course, is that we only have really information about domestic animals like cattle and goats and sheep. However, There is evidence that it affects adult horses, from what I've read, and it's entirely possible that it runs a different progression in predators. Predators are a completely different ball game. They're a completely different biological design, a completely different digestive system. So it's entirely possible that it does affect the adult lions as well. We just didn't know about it. We're trying to stick purely with the facts and purely with what we know, and avoiding all kinds of any elaboration or guessing on the facts. I'm just telling you exactly what it is I've observed. I think it's too much of a coincidence that both lionesses are walking stiffly. I'm looking to see if I can find amber eyes. I want to just try and figure this out. If only so that we can provide information for the future. And they're eating so well. The number of times that I wish I could take back the sentence about the fact that the drought is going to benefit the predators, which it has in a way. But we spoke so much about that at the beginning, the fact that there would be a predator boom, that they would be successful, and they have been incredibly successful. They have not been without food, but this was a completely unexpected side effect of the drought. And it makes me wonder, I really think that there is something to Gen B's idea about the fact that the lions have only been eating buffalo. Because the leopards are absolutely fine of this area. They're feeding off things like duiker and impala, mixed feeders, feeders that have access to slightly better nutrition. But then lions are much bigger as well. They need things in far higher quantities than something like a leopard. Hey, little cub. So hard to believe that a month ago we were watching these perfectly healthy little cubs play with each other. My eyes automatically drawn to any of the adult lionesses that actually stand up. She looks okay. Tail flicking. Denise, a very natural question that you've asked, and Denise wants to know whether there will be any kind of intervention for animals with an illness. No, not if the illness is of natural cause. And I know that is a very difficult thing for some to understand, and it's a very difficult thing for all of us, because of course our natural desire is to want to help. However, these animals are completely wild. They're in an open, natural, wild system, and nature has her ways. Nature does things and balances things in a way that we might not necessarily understand, but that makes complete sense to her. Bear in mind, if the population of lions were to spike, we would immediately see a drop in population of other predators like cheetah, leopard, hyena, wild dog. There is a very, very delicate balance out here, and nature has her ways of maintaining it. Denise, that would be a completely different thing, completely different story, if it were anthropogenic. In other words, if it were introduced or caused by human beings in some way. She's fine, I think. She looks fine to me, the way that she's walking. So that's good. That is good news. So Denise, if it were canine distemper, then yes, absolutely, there would be immediate intervention. And one of the big reasons why people acted in order to test the cubs was because we didn't know exactly what the problem with those particular lions were, or these particular lions were. You little cub? All done. Looking good. Well done, little cub. So no, there will be no intervention if it is a natural cause, which it is, from what the evidence suggests, it is natural cause, and therefore no, there will be no intervention. It would be a very different story in different parts of Africa. It would be a very different story if populations of lions were not in areas where lions are endangered. In South Africa, we're very fortunate in that our lion population is healthy and thriving. And I understand that it is difficult and it is very hard sometimes to understand, but it is the case. And it's the decision that is made by those who have spent many, many, many years working and studying and building off the knowledge of generations of conservationists. She's fine. She's absolutely fine. One other thing that you'll notice when we're in sightings such as this, well, I personally am giving the Nkuhuma lionesses. Oh, little one. So much noise. So much noise. It's very easy to imagine that it's a cub objecting to a morning bath, which of course is not what that is. It's begging sounds, but that was so sweet. Sorry, let me just finish my sentence that I started earlier. One of the things that you'll notice is we're giving the lions a bit of extra space. She's come to us now and moved close to the vehicle, but when we move in, we're giving them as much space as possible, because although our Nkuhumas are incredibly comfortable with us around, if they are struggling to move, if they are struggling to get up, we don't want to make them feel threatened in any way. They're going to feel more and more vulnerable as this goes on. And the same applies for when we're walking as well, avoiding the areas completely. Right, well, speaking about walking, of course, Taylor is on foot. Let us go and see what she's found. We don't have to move off too far. We've got an amazing view of Mfumo, whose face, as I said, is looking 10 times better. In fact, it's almost completely healed up. He's been watching the cubs go past with a relatively tolerant air. The one that was getting the bath earlier walked past making such a fuss. Hello. Hi, Dad. And then off it goes. The one that earlier was making such a fuss, going... Eventually Mfumo looked up at it and just gave the biggest sigh I think I've ever heard him give, almost as if to say, all right, I'm up. I'm awake. What do you want? It's been fantastic to see this particular side of the Birmingham boys with their cubs. Going from aggressors to the dominant male lions and then to fathers of this particular set of cubs. And it's been really, truly enjoyable to watch them interact with them. We've got a whole load of little cubs sort of spread out around me. The cub that walked off with, that was having the bath and was making all of that noise, seems to be walking absolutely fine. And I just want to clarify that we're still not certain at all whether or not the adult lionesses are showing signs of the same problem. I personally think they are. But we haven't got any confirmation. The one lioness who's really clearly struggling to walk has got an old injury, and it could be that. So we don't know for certain, which is one of the big reasons why I've wanted to sit here for as long as possible, just to watch. And I'm keeping track of each and every lioness. The one that went and lay down there that's struggling to move, she hasn't moved at all. But that could be an injury. So we're just not certain yet. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to actually get footage of them moving and to send that through to the people who are in the know so that they can understand and give their own expert opinion. Oh, I'm sure that buffalo face was complete a moment ago. That was rapid. She must have peeled, sorry, I know it's a bit gory, but she must have peeled back the skin so quickly. I haven't really been watching what's happening over there. Nibbling away, one cub determined, hasn't left that carcass at all. Determined to get the most out of it. I don't know how much is left on the second carcass. I haven't been across in that direction. I said earlier that the lioness went and chased the vultures away, but she doesn't seem terribly committed to it. Hello, little ones. You have got so big. Now that you're up next to the vehicle, it's very easy to see. Positively massive. Oh, big yawn. Hello, little one. Michael, you'd like us to try and determine how many male and female cubs are left. I am one of the things that I am doing is trying to work that out. At least one of the middle sets of female cubs is fine. It looks like all three older cubs are here. Oh, Oh, that's okay. If you're stopping to relieve yourself, that's fine. All three older cubs are present. It seems to be the youngest three that have been affected, which includes the one cub, of course, that was incredibly noticeable due to one very floppy ear. Taylor's favorite little lion cub. All three young ones are missing. From what I can tell, the remaining ones are the oldest set and the middle set of cubs, which would mean, what would that? That would be 1 male and 4 females, unless I've forgotten exactly what the breakdown was, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the oldest cubs was a male and the rest female, and then the 2 middle cubs were females as well. So, Michael, that's what I think, sort of on a preliminary assessment. I think that is what we have remaining. And that makes sense, doesn't it? It makes complete sense that the younger set of cubs would be the first to be compromised by this particular disease or this particular deficiency because they're younger. They haven't had as much access to the milk. They aren't as resilient. They aren't as strong. It makes total sense that something that's going to affect the lions would start with the youngest and most vulnerable members of the pride. So it looks like it's the 3 that are, we know 2 of them already are dead. The third has not been confirmed, but it basically has been. We know, essentially. Although, we had the 5th surprise member come and join us this morning. We can still hold out hope. Shame, little ones. I know it is hard, but I'm going to stay here for as long as possible. I've explained why and what it is we're trying to achieve while we're sitting here. So while we watch the various adults move about, let's go back across to James and the royal family of the ever-vigilant cubs. And the cubs slowly but surely stalking towards them. Oh, vultures. It's very brave. Cub distracted by the other cub. This is the cub that's the worst, seems to be the worst affected to me, the one on the left at the back. Oh. Still trying to play, trying to stalk the vultures. You can see the hip sway. Cute. 2 innocent little cubs desperately keeping an eye on a type of bird that I don't think is going to be winning any beauty awards. What do you think, Liam? I think not. Oh, wow. Hooded vultures are incredible birds, and they're a very, very essential species out here in terms of the ecosystem. And they don't have to be pretty. They have to be functional. But they're not very pretty at all. Their bright blue eyes. When this one first arrived, it was flushed bright pink. Obviously from perhaps the exertion of trying to get into this area. You can see it's still retaining a little bit of the flush around the edges and around the neck. And those bald faces, perfect for digging in. Oh, no. Yucky. Eating lion scat. Affirmative, just myself. You're welcome to make your way. Sorry, everybody, just had to chat on the Game Drive channel to let one of the other vehicles know that they can make their way in. So this is behavior we've seen many. Gross. Sorry, everybody, for you. I hope you weren't in the middle of eating a meal, because that is bound to do some damage to your appetite. But it is interesting behavior. Oh, hold on. What's happening here? Oh. Why is she dragging? She's dragged the carcass a little bit further back. I haven't quite worked out the identity of the lioness that's been feeding. Amber Eyes has got up and moved off. She was the one lying in the middle of the road. Okay. I think we're going to need to do some repositioning, and it might actually help us to get a better idea as to what's happening. But because Nkuhuma is where he is, we might struggle to creep past him without disturbing him, so we might have to do a little bit of a loop and just drive around quickly. It shouldn't take us too long. I don't think the cub's going to go racing after those vultures. Let's go and have a look from a different perspective. Very good question from Aaron in New Zealand, who's wondering, does the hood on the vulture, the hooded vulture obviously, serve any kind of a purpose? I'm not sure. Probably, if I had to guess, Aaron, I would say probably to do with breeding and to do with essentially sexual dominant status. Might be something that can be raised when the vultures are courting. It's interesting, speaking of vultures courting, it's interesting always watching the behavior of vultures around a kill like this, because essentially what will happen is while they're waiting, they find the time or find a way to spend their time to occupy themselves in the form of mating. And oh, I hope I didn't just drive through that. Definitely this very fresh smelling lion scat. So it's always interesting to witness the way that they go about this, and there's often a lot of noise involved. I've been watching them, they did it a little bit earlier. I've been waiting for the opportunity to get it on camera. Here we go, hold on. Squeeze past the tambuti. Hello, vultures. But yes, it's always interesting to watch the interaction, and Aaron, that's something that I'm going to start keeping an eye out for. It's usually the white-backed that are involved in such activities, round carcasses, but I will keep an eye on the behavior of the hooded vultures to perhaps see if maybe we can get a little bit more insight into the purpose of the hood. I'm sure it makes sense that it's for breeding purposes, because a hood, vultures are generally relatively bald just so that they avoid getting their feathers all mucked up by the things that they feed upon, but a hood would actually probably be counterproductive in that sense. So the only way really it would make sense to me is if it's involved somehow in displays and within mating. You saw how that vulture could flush earlier. The lioness has dragged the carcass away a little bit and more into slightly denser cover, and she probably did it to try in a sort of vain attempt or an instinctive attempt to hide it from the vultures. I've lost track now. I've been so good at keeping track of which lioness is which, and now they've moved, and I'm a bit confused. All cubs have gathered and are feeding on the carcass. And just so you know, the information that we've gathered today, this morning, has already been sent off to those who are in authority and those who are experts in this particular field. So we'll keep you updated as soon as we know exactly what the conclusions are. And they haven't finished autopsying the carcass of the cub. They've come up with preliminary findings, which seems to indicate white muscle disease, but they're still searching. And it's amazing how efficient the systems are that are in place in terms of testing the various bodies, essentially, that are found. Brian, on that subject, you want to know if we know how long it will take for this disease to run its course? Not a clue. Honestly, really, truly, I have no idea. And there's very little research that will actually give us a proper indication as to how it's going to work and what exactly is going to happen. Because, of course, most of the research is conducted on livestock. And wild lions are a completely different ballgame. So I don't know the answer to that. Again, as we said, it's preliminary results that have come through. So we don't know with absolute certainty exactly what is going on here. All evidence seems to indicate white muscle disease. Sorry, I'm just listening to the vultures over there. I just want to see if they're going to give us the example of that behavior I was talking about earlier. Oh, fighting, squabbling for the best possible position. The victor stands tall, so no mating happening there. That was just a fight over space. And they're probably all fighting at the bottom there. We might go and have a look at them in a moment at the carcass that's further north of us, just to see exactly what's going on. And see how much of that is left. It's also interesting to me that the lionesses have let the vultures descend now. They haven't chased them away. Well, I suppose they've got one buffalo, so they seem to be okay. What are you talking about, little cub? Making such a noise today. It's the same cub from earlier. Ouch, thorn. Very vocal today. Oh, Liam, we dodged a bullet here. Ugh. That was a little bit too close for comfort. In fact, so close that Liam can't even get a camera on it. I wondered why it was so smelly here. You've got to be careful in a lion sighting around a kill, because you never know when you might drive through what we affectionately term as landmines. Just because once you drive through leopard scat, there's no going back, and your vehicle's going to smell for the next week or so. But fortunately, that is something we've avoided. It applies whether you are talking about a lion sighting or a leopard sighting. I think let's head back across to James and the royal family. I thought perhaps it might be time to lighten the mood ever so slightly. And I've been watching the antics of these two hooded vultures, and I have to say that in my head, the Pink Panther theme tune is playing every time they sneak out. And basically what they do is they creep out into the road, and then they creep back behind the bush. Just look. Ba-bum, 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 ba-da. It's keeping me entertained on what has been a relatively sad morning, although a morning with hope. And it is fascinating to watch their behavior as they creep forward slowly. You've got an amazing view of those talons and their thin bills. Look at this. Just look at those feet. Da-dum, da-dum. Especially when there's two of them. There's a certain feeling of bumbling ineptitude, which of course is completely unfair. They are. There you go. That should have been the climax of the music, right there. Ba-bum, ba-bum. How brave are we feeling today? Da-dum, da-dum. Which way are we going to go? They've obviously finished off the lion scat that they were feeding on earlier. Nope, not brave. Nope, I'm gonna have a go at the other vulture just because. There's another vehicle coming, so they are going to move off. Now, I said that it's a cause for hope as well, this particular sighting, and it is. The fact that the fifth lion cub is here is a very, very hopeful sign indeed. The fact that it has rained, that the animals are looking slightly healthier, that the buffalo are looking slightly healthier, is a really very good sign for our various lions. As I said, the preliminary autopsy results have indicated that it is white muscle disease, and I want to explain to you exactly where that conclusion was drawn from, just so that you have as much access to what we've learned as possible. Hi, guys. Hi. Are you okay there? Perfect. Essentially, one of the big symptoms, sorry everybody, I just had to greet one of the other vehicles. Essentially, one of the big symptoms of white muscle disease is white muscles, hence the name. Or the sort of unofficial name of nutritional muscular dystrophy. They, as I said, they autopsied one of the cubs. I'm not going to show you the pictures because they're very graphic, but all indications seem to suggest that that is the case. At least the evidence is pointing in that direction, because the cub's muscles were white. In patches of white where it should have been. And you can see, you've seen carcasses many, many times. You're looking at a buffalo carcass now. You know what the meat usually looks like and what the muscles usually look like. And the fact that it was white in color, whitish yellow in color, is a very strong indication that the initial theory was correct. And as I said, I'm not going to show you those pictures because they are very, very graphic. But that is where we have drawn those initial conclusions. However, the vets and the scientists are not satisfied with just that. Oh, hello, yellow-billed kite just flew over us. Don't know if you saw that tail. Well done to Liam for managing to catch that. I don't know if you saw that tail. It's a very distinctive shape. Very, very distinctive shape of the tail. That almost, well done, Liam. That was epic. It's a very sort of clear-cut junk. It goes like that. And we'll see now if it decides to land. You'll be able to see it closer, but it is a yellow-billed kite. One more time, just so that you can memorize that exact... Oh, that was unexpected. Liam is playing games with you this morning. Ducking and diving. Oh, my goodness.
Did he just give
Just basically flew right next to the other vehicle in the sighting. That was incredible. at that. Amazingly agile flyers. Sorry, we will get back to the questions on the lions in a moment. Amazingly, amazingly agile flyers. And this is fascinating to watch. I wonder what it's after. They do scavenge occasionally, but they're more effective hunters. Those aerial acrobatics are astounding. Right. Okay. It has moved off. Yellow-billed kite. Now, Valerie, you wanted to know, Valerie's watching in Canada, you wanted to know whether or not this disease is painful in any way, or if it's just a weakness of the muscles. I don't know. I do you mind? I'm busy talking. All right, you finish your piece then. They've been so vocal. Sorry, Valerie, I'll get back to you in a second. Oh, I love those sounds. One of my favorite sounds of the bush. But the animals can't talk, Valerie, of course. So we don't really know for certain. My hope is that it is just a weakness of the muscles. That's not to say it isn't distressing for them, because, of course, it must be very, very unpleasant for them to not be able to get up, to not have the control of the limbs that they used to have. It's absolutely heart-wrenching for us to watch, especially because we have become so invested in these cubs and in their lives. Oh. Which lioness is this now? Sorry, let's just watch for a moment. I need to figure out who this is. It's Amber. You recording, Liam? Yeah, it's Amber Eyes. Oh, I'm sorry. It might be an injury from hunting 2 buffalo in one night, but probably seems very coincidental to me. It's cold today. Might be a stiff injury, but I don't think so. That information has already been shared, just by the way, with the authorities. That was one of the big reasons that I stayed in this sighting for as long as we have, to be able to draw a proper conclusion. And I needed to see one other adult lioness that was not the one with the injury. I needed to see one adult lioness moving properly before I drew any kind of conclusion. And now that we have, I think in just a few moments I'm probably actually going to move out of this sighting. We've got the information that we needed to get. But as I said, we're not despairing just yet. The changes have come around at the right time. The 5th cub is a wonderful thing to be seeing, and whilst it still looks weak, it is moving around, it is walking around. There's a little wobble every now and again, but a little wobble's okay. And the rest of them are looking relatively healthy. And oh, they're still feisty enough to smack at each other. And Heather, in Minnesota, you want to know if there is a link between this disease and the mange. Also an option I've considered, also an option that I've thought about. Heather, I don't actually want to give a comment on that really, because I'm not an expert, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a vet. I know the animals relatively well, and I know a little bit about the science behind them, but I haven't spent the years training and learning about these different diseases. My suspicion, Heather, is no. But that comes, of course, with a caveat that there are so many unknown factors and I just don't know. But my suspicion is no. The fact that the Nkuhuma's mange was getting better, and it was getting better. They've almost fully recovered, particularly the older cubs. I don't think it is connected. However, did it weaken the cubs? Possibly. Did it make them more susceptible to it? Maybe. I just don't know. And I don't really want to speculate too much on that particular subject. I don't think so, though. However, the drought, mange, and this deficiency, they're both connected to the drought. And I've mentioned that there is cause for hope. Liz, you want to know... Oh, what are you talking about now? it's missing the rest of the cubs. It's possible. It's been calling all morning. Liz, moving away from that sad subject, you want to know if it's possible that the muscles will get stronger. Yes, there is a recovery there's records of recovery of animals from this particular deficiency. The fact that it has rained, the fact that the buffalo are eating better food, the meat quality is going to be much improved. Yes, absolutely. Provided the lionesses stay strong enough to be able to hunt, and that is the special thing about a lion pride, is I know that at least 2 of these lionesses are as yet unaffected by it. They're still strong. So if they are still hunting, if they provide food, the rest of the pride will be okay, or could be okay. And the more rain that we have, the better the food quality. You've seen how green the grass has gone. Yes, they will get the nutrients that they need, and there's a good chance they can recover. It just has to happen fast enough, particularly for the cubs, because the cubs, of course, are much smaller and therefore a little bit less resilient than the adults. So fingers crossed. That's what we're hoping for. The fact that things have changed and that the rain has come and that the buffalo are looking healthier. I've got what I set out to search for this morning, which is footage of the adult lionesses and the way in which they're walking. We've now seen 2 of them moving about, and that was really why I wanted to stick around at this lion sighting until we could properly confirm everything that was happening. So now, I think we're going to move on. We're going to leave the lions to go about their daily morning business. We're going to move off and see if we can search for other things, perhaps that carcass. In the meantime, and Taylor's been very busy on bushwalk, let's head across and see what she has in store for you now.